Hi guys, it's Colette and I wanted to do just a quick intro for this video. I just finished doing my mom's nails and she went back and forth so many times on all the tests that you're about to see and which one was her personal favorite. And she ended up choosing one that was basically not even intended as an actual design. It was one with the color she wanted, but not the base color she wanted, and we ended up switching at the very last minute to a white base. So in the end, it turned out really good. She's happy with it, and I'm happy with it, but I just thought I would include this additional intro. I think this testing is also going to end up with two intros, but you know, you always have to be flexible with water marbling, and sometimes you get little surprises even more if you're water marbling with or for someone else. So if you'd like to see the testing process for my mom's spring green and blue water marble, just stay tuned. Oh, P.S. If you didn't see this manicure and you are interested in this from this video, this is my spring pastel and hollow water marble, and I'll include a link to that as well. Hi guys, it's Colette, and today we're going to be polish testing and design testing for my mom's water marble. And usually she'll give me a couple colors that she'd like, and then I'll see what I can find that'll work, and then give her a couple of options for different patterns. So I'm starting with Zoya, Gemma, and China Glaze for Audrey, and I'm really kind of crossing my fingers that these just work, and then I can move on to testing different designs. And I've also got my little test strip prepped here, half with the blue and half with the green. So I think I may have marbled with For Audrey before, but I don't think I've used Gemma, so we'll just see here how they play together. Okay, actually I think I'll try and squeeze 2 more drops in there. You can kind of see that Audrey doesn't spread as much as Gemma does, and Gemma kind of gives Audrey a little push in some cases. I think I'm just going to start out with, see how these work for some chevrons, and then I may try like a flower petal design. She also kind of wanted a gray, but I hadn't pulled out one yet, so we'll see just how these look together, if they seem like they need another color to add to the design. Dip in there, and then pull out. That's not too bad. I went with dipping over Gemma first because, and I'm just cleaning up the bowl a little, the cup underneath that quickly. It looked kind of sheer in the water, and I wasn't sure how it was going to turn out over the blue. I can tell because of the way that Audrey needed Gemma to spread out that I have a little bit of like blending together, especially in this section, and more toward the middle. The outer rings are cleaner, so it may turn out that a flower design turns out generally cleaner, but we'll just test that and see. And I should have been paying attention how many drops that was to see how many I was really aiming for with this one. But that's minor. I'm going to push my luck and add 2 more rings, even though I think they might have a little bit of bleeding, just because with my mom's nails being so small, of course, more rings and a more detailed design show up better on small nails. And we'll just draw in a basic flower from all sides toward the center here. Okay, so here we have a flower. You can see I've left one side with what would be 8 petals and double that amount on the other side. Just again, like I think I've mentioned before, trying to multitask with the testing and not only testing one thing at a time. And the green actually shows up quite well over for Audrey, almost as well as it does over itself. And that's why I always, you'll notice, make a little mark on the side here, because otherwise, just looking at these two, you might not be able to tell which one is the green test and which one is the blue test. And sometimes testing for my mom is really hard because the colors she chooses are not colors that I would necessarily choose myself. So I have to disconnect from saying, hey, I don't like that, and think, okay, is my mom gonna like that? And the colors do go together, but I think as far as working together in the water, but I think I want to experiment with a different green. So I'm going to see what I can find for that, and then I'll be back. Alrighty, I pulled out 2 additional China Glaze colors. This is Peace on Earth, and this is Hook and Line. And they both are swatching a little darker than I really wanted, but I'm gonna give them a try and see how they work in the water anyway. I think this first one is just gonna be for Audrey and Peace on Earth, and then in the next test after this, I'll try adding in the gray. So I think you can see how much nicer these two work together than for Audrey was working with Gemma. The rings are much more even, and you know, the blue is spreading without needing the other one to push it out. And they're drawing quite nicely, so I think I'm going to do a similar design to what I did before, but with this one I'm going to go ahead and put points on half of the cup. And get my strip ready here. Make sure I get both of the halves and dip in. See, now with this one, I think over Gemma for Audrey was pretty much holding its own. It still looked very blue on top. With this one, you can see that the green as the base color darkens it up quite a bit, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But if I do decide to go with that color, I would probably do another test with the blue as the base. So now on to the other color. I'm going to try and squeeze a couple more drops in here. You can probably see that this gray is reacting much like the blue did in the first couple, where it doesn't really want to spread out by itself, and it kind of needs a little bit of help from the other colors. So let's try and get that last drop to spread just a little bit. May or may not cooperate with me. Get one more drop in here. Maybe, maybe not. Another, I don't know if you want to call it a trick, but when you feel like the center drops are not spreading and you have a thick buildup of polish in the center, that's a good combination to go ahead and drag out to the sides, because that will kind of force the polish to spread out a little bit more and you won't end up with that gummy center. So for this one, I'm just going to go ahead and draw in some petals, some parallel petals, not flower petals, and then we'll give it a dip and see how this gray turned out. just from how it's working in the water, I'm not particularly wanting to use it, but it may look better than I expected. But you can see here, if I can get the glare off, that it turns out quite a bit darker than it looks like it would turn out in the bottle. Get that dip. And see, this is, and I'm thinking my mom would probably like this, but to me this is a little bit too dark. So I think I will retry both of those combinations, or maybe just with the gray. I want to retry it with a blue base, I know that much, so I'm going to get another test strip ready. Get this little bit of leftover polish out of here. In fact, I think the surface needs to get cleared off, so just going to use 1 drop of polish. Yeah, you can see how lopsided that's spreading. Just go ahead and run around the edges so that it spreads out all the way to the sides of the cup. And then pull the whole thing out and your surface should be much cleaner. And I think for this first one, I'm actually going to do a test of just the blue and the gray together. So let's see how this works. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that. That's like 8 rings, which you can see they're pretty wide. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go out to the sides. I'm going to draw on some fairly wide chevrons. And then I'm going to go back through across those and do some petals. So you can see that that creates a different design than just drawing petals across. You get some more lines, some more detail. At least on this end of the cup. This end of the cup, you know, if I were to dip in this, I would stay away from this whole area over here and go aiming in this area. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to get as much of the good area as I can. And then, you know, on top of the blue, and even on the areas where the blue wasn't on top of the white, this gray polish just does not come across very gray. I'm gonna do one more with all 3 colors, but I'm thinking I want to move away from using that gray. I think I'll switch up the pattern a little bit here too, and see how that looks. Okay, this is 9 drops. Yeah, I think, okay, 1 more gray in the middle. Just to, because that'll be the one that we stretch out here, so it doesn't really matter if it doesn't want to spread. And I'm going to do chevrons again for this one. So you can either go one direction and then the other direction, or then you can go one direction repeatedly and then go back in between. And it will be a slightly different pattern. One day I would love to just sit down and do a video on the very slight differences if you do patterns in slightly different ways. But today is not that day. Today is just normal testing. So that I actually like better with the green in there than just with the gray, and definitely better over the blue base than over the green base. I still feel like this design is a little bit too widely spaced to fit on my mom's nails, and I don't feel like I'm quite hitting on the colors that she really wanted. So I'm going to pull out just a couple more colors and do a couple more tests. Okay, for my light blue, I pulled out Color Club Meet Me at the Rink, and then it's in the box with all my halo hues, so just to try, I pulled out Fingers Crossed. And the next cup is just going to be, what is this? Meet Me at the Rink and Peace on Earth. And then in the cup after this, I'll add in the hollow. And I'll do all that after I change my battery because I see it blinking. I'm learning, you guys. Okay. I let that drawing get kind of messy, but we'll just clean it off as best as possible. I don't think this actually needs a drop of polish, and that's something you'll learn just as you go around. If the pieces are just little pieces and they're kind of just floating around on their own, they usually will move out of the way. It's when the surface gets, as I call it, kind of scummy, that you may run into a problem. So hopefully these two will play nicely together. And you can usually tell within the first couple of rings. And these are thankfully working really nicely together. Working with even rings is generally my preference unless I'm doing a design that for some reason I want uneven rings. But I still would prefer the polish spread evenly, and then if you want uneven rings, you just drip different amounts of polish. So I think for this, I'm going to do chevrons again, just normal sized chevrons. Well, actually, no, skinnier sized chevrons, but just back and forth chevrons is what I meant to say. So just using a very light touch. I always want to use as light of a touch as you can get away with. And then maybe on this end of the cup, I'll do just a couple petals. Multitasking. Okay, so dip and I actually like that. It looks kind of patchy and uneven at different angles of the light. That might just be because there's so much water beating up on it. And I feel like I want less green than what's showing. So let's give it a try with the hollow added in. Okay, so as I go along here, you can see that the hollow doesn't spread quite as evenly. You know, the green ring is visibly wider than the hollow ring. But I'd consider this within an acceptable range. In fact, maybe just one more drop of blue in there. That'll put me at an even 10. 10 drops is kind of my default, what I usually aim for, unless the polishes are acting weird. And for this, I'm just going to go again with some very narrow petals. And I may try like a swirl design after this also, but let's see how these play together first. And for this one, I am using the hollow as the base color, just to see how the hollow plays. Oh, see, now that I like. The hollow is actually, it's got a little bit of a greenish goldish tint to it at the right angles when you're not catching all the hollow rainbows. I almost still feel like that's too much green, but I suppose it would depend on exactly where in the cup the dip is. So I think those three colors are going to be my three colors, and I'm just going to want to test a few more designs, or even, you know, I wonder if I should try doing them in the opposite order. We'll do that too, as soon as I get another test strip ready. Okay, same colors, opposite order. And if I have trouble with polishes, the very first thing I do to try and fix the problem before I start looking for other colors is just to drip them in the opposite order, because they react differently. Dripping the green after the hollow instead of the blue really can, in some cases, make a big difference. In this case, they were already working fairly good together, so I don't feel like it's making a huge difference, but it is making a definitely noticeable difference. And what do we have here? 9 rings. We'll sneak one more drop of hollow in there. And I think I'm going to do the same design as that last one, just so that you can also see same design, different order. You're going to get a different look. And I'll show those side by side, and of course I always include a close-up picture at the end of the video. Sometimes those turn out better than others. For some reason, the flat test strips sometimes seem really difficult to photograph without getting a lot of glare. So there is that order. And can I fit both of these here? Well, I suppose it would help if they were facing the same direction, but I didn't dip them in the same direction. So you see, it's a subtle difference, but it is definitely a difference. Of course, this one also does not have a base color, but just like visualizing in my head, I do like the way that one turned out. So if I were going to go with that pattern, I would definitely want to keep that order of colors. Otherwise, it's not a huge deal. In some cases, the color that you end with will make a difference if you're stretching it out to the sides, because you're not going to have, like, so when you're looking at this from the edges, you're getting hollow green blue, hollow, that's the center stripe. So you're not getting hollow green blue anymore, you're getting hollow blue green, hollow blue green. I hope that makes sense. You want to keep mindful. In some cases, I really want that center where it's reversing the order. In other cases, I want them to all be the same. And so I would need to pick, okay, am I going to be dipping on this side of the center line or this side of the center line? All very minor. These are the minor type of things that go through my head when I'm water marbling. So I have one more side of a test strip here, and I'm just going to give these in that same order as the last cup a try, and I'm going to do a spiral. The spiral is another one of those designs that can have very different results depending on how you draw it. I mean, you can draw a spiral right directly on the bullseye. I usually like to pull one of those, what I kind of call a pinwheel, before I draw it, and that just adds more detail. You could do it with just 2 lines drawn in it. You could draw it with 8 lines drawn in it. They're all going to lead to slightly different spirals, as well as whether you draw from the outside inward or from the inside outward. And that turned out pretty cool. The petals are a little bit wonky out toward the edges, but it's a pretty clean spiral, and I do like the way that turned out. And I'm a little bit tempted to do even more testing, but I would feel quite foolish if I kept testing with those colors and my mom doesn't like them. So I'm going to check with her, and if she likes one of these designs, that's the design we're going to be using. And if she doesn't like any of these designs, I may be back for a few more tests. But that's already 5 strips with 2 designs each, so that's already 10 tests. So I'm kind of hoping that's it. I'm going to use this same cup to do some testing on my own next manicure, but I don't think there will be a behind the scenes for that because it's either going to work or it's not. And also, just to mention, most of my behind the scenes, you'll have seen my nails are naked. Testing can get messy sometimes, especially if you get sloppy as you're dipping. And if I'm already planning to change my manicure, generally I'll just take it off before I start testing so that I don't get polish on my manicure and then my peelies would be all ugly. So it's not a requirement or anything, just thought I'd notice. And if I'm not back and if I don't record a special outro, I hope you guys enjoyed some more behind the scenes. And as always, thanks for watching. Okay, I am in fact back. You know how I said I shouldn't get too carried away and it's hard to predict what my mom will like? She actually liked best my least favorite one. So we are going to experiment a little bit more with this combination. This is for Audrey and Gemma, with Gemma as the base. And her request was, she kind of likes the chevrons, but on the other hand, she doesn't like them because sometimes she has a little bit of trouble in dipping her finger in straight. So she requested a more random design. So I'm going to get the bullseye in here, and then I'm going to attempt to do something a little bit more random for her. And probably I'm only going to get a couple more drops in here. I don't know if I should have started with the green. I just thought I'd give it a try since all the other ones I had started with the blue. And can I squeeze one more in here? I'm going to do it. Okay. So usually, even if I'm going to do a random design, I try to... Oh, that little extra drag was caused by hair on my orange stick, but we're just going to leave it. What I was going to say is I try to at least have some method even to the more random designs, because otherwise you're going to get too much variation in between your nails. So I should have been paying better attention. Mentally, I kind of was. We'll see how this looks, and then I'll maybe try one more, starting with blue as the first ring. And gosh, that's not a very good representation. I really probably should be using green as my base color here. Maybe I'll go ahead and quickly, yeah, I better do that. I'm going to quickly paint it on this other half of the test strip, just so that we can get an accurate idea of what it's going to look like. Sometimes after I do a test and I decide which base color I like, I don't bother with the base color for the rest of the tests because you can still pretty much clearly see the pattern and envision how it's going to be. But we'll just do that for now, and I'm going to start this bullseye with the blue. Okay, she did also quite like the spiral design, so maybe what I'll do here is pull this out and then back in, and then do kind of a S curve through the design and loop it back around and kind of swirl it. That looks kind of cool. So this way we get a swirly design with it still being random enough that she doesn't have the pressure of having to aim for any certain spot. Can just kind of generally aim for where the most detail is. So I think, yeah, I think she'll probably like that. Obviously less bubbles on the actual manicure, but sometimes I don't employ all my tips when I'm testing because that's not what I'm testing for, if that makes sense. So I don't make sure to dip my test strips in and out super slowly to prevent bubbles, and that type of tips. But now we really have the end of the video, because I think she'll like that one. But just like I said, to keep in mind when you're designing a manicure for someone else, it's often really tempting to go with what you like, but that might be completely opposite from what they actually want. So check in with your friends or family or client as necessary to make sure that you're going to do something that you're both happy with. So again, I hope you guys enjoyed this behind the scenes. Make sure to subscribe and turn on those notifications. These are a little bit of a pain in the butt to do and a little bit of a pain in the butt to edit, but I've had really good feedback, so there will be more, even after Water Marble March, of behind the scenes. So I hope you guys all enjoyed, and thanks for watching.